everyone, Michelle Sadling here with another episode of Food Experience Unplugged. Today we'll explore the importance of persevering through life's challenges in order to pursue and achieve your goals. Here to help us do that is award-winning speaker Carrie Creed. This podcast is available on multiple platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and others, as well as our website at foodexperienceunplugged.com. Please be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform for new content as it becomes available. Please also check out our website at foodexperienceunplugged.com for some free resources as you begin your health journey. Carrie Creed, welcome to Food Experience Unplugged.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate you having me on your show.
Oh, well, we are so happy to have you, and you just have an exciting array of life experiences that have really helped in your positivity and your focus and your perseverance through life. And it's so exciting and refreshing to see you as a speaker just relaying and sharing your experiences, and we're so happy to have you on the show.
Oh, I appreciate that. You know, what we think about on a daily basis, and that mindset that we decide to have every hour, every minute, every day really shapes who we are as individuals and the life that we're going to have for ourselves and our families. Because if we think positive, positive things will happen. If we fall in the negative, traditionally negative things are going to keep occurring.
Absolutely, definitely. And you're living proof of a variety of experiences and staying positive. So on that note, will you give an introduction of yourself and what brought you to this point in your life, in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, my name is Carrie Creed, and I have founded my company to really help inspire and empower others to overcome their individual personal challenges by sharing my personal story of survival and perseverance through some pretty unique and complicated medical situations that I've had throughout my life.
Okay, wow. So that's incredible, and I can't wait to hear the stories. So let's see. So will you kind of relay some the stories, and then we can we'll get into more of the discussion of what you've learned from it and so forth.
Sure, absolutely. So to start off, when I was a child, I started having some physical challenges. I was very tired. I was very flexible. My joints were very unstable, and I was in a lot of pain. And this started most likely around the time I was in middle school. I was on a basketball team. I played softball, and I had knee braces and wrist braces and ankle braces. And eventually I was diagnosed with a genetic condition called Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, or EDS. I was born with it. It's a genetic condition, like I said, but it's hereditary, but they didn't know anyone in my family who had it. And it's very difficult to diagnose. And so it took a long time to find the doctor to be able to diagnose me correctly. And I was misdiagnosed for many, many years. When I had those challenges, I would sublux and dislocate very easily. And like I said before, I had a ton of pain. And in high school, I started to have extreme muscle weakness, and my right leg completely inverted and bent in the wrong direction. So stay with me now for a second. If you can picture yourself standing up, your feet are parallel and your kneecaps point forward, at least they should. And if you bent your legs, your kneecaps would bend forward, right? My right knee bent this way, completely behind my left leg, but my feet stayed parallel.
Wow.
And that happened all of a sudden. So as you can imagine, it was extremely painful. And I was crippled into a wheelchair within days. The doctors did a surgery, and they repaired a ligament that had stretched out, and I rehabbed, and this was my sophomore year in high school, and I rehabbed and persevered and got out of the hospital in time to go with my high school boyfriend to the junior senior prom, and borrowed a friend's dress and threw it on. I took my cane, left the cane in the car because it's not cool to take a cane into a prom. Let's face it, it didn't match my dress. And, I had a blast, and I ended up back in the hospital the next day, but we won't go there. I survived. And then fast forward a couple more years, I thought I was okay. And I thought I got past these challenges, and, I still lived in daily pain with the Ehlers-Danlos, and I was kind of like, okay, I just need to adapt my life slightly, but I'm okay.
Mhm.
And after my freshman year in college, I was in nursing school because the medical world fascinated me because I was so involved with my diagnosis and research of it. And I took my finals, and I remember this day so vividly. I was walking back from my last final, and I noticed my knee just slightly going in as I was walking up this hill.
Mm.
I thought to myself, that doesn't look right. And I'm afraid it's going to keep going that way. And I remember calling my mom at home and just saying, hey, can you call the surgeon and, make an appointment? We did. Appointment was in 2 weeks. And within 3 days, I could no longer walk.
Oh
So my
my.
whole leg bent again, and I was back to square one. And long story short, but that first surgery had failed, and I had to go through a pretty barbaric, unique, complex surgery where the fabulous orthopedic surgeons literally took a saw and sawed apart my thigh bone, my femur, and sawed apart my tibia and fibula, my lower bones, rotated them in opposite directions, and inserted 12 rods. And I say you saw some pictures on my website, carriecreed.com. I show a few images of my leg, and also on my Instagram and Facebook page at Carrie Creed Speaker. So if you want to check them out, please do. They're not as scary as I'm probably making them sound. But at that point, the doctors had said I'd missed one semester of school. And I thought, I can do this. Could probably pick up those credits in the summer and probably still stay with my class. As with any great story, for lack of a better word, it's not what happened. And I actually stayed in the hospital on bed rest for 73 days.
Wow.
And had almost every complication possible. Another emergency surgery with my pin coming out. I contracted staph MRSA from the operating room. Just a number of setbacks and challenges. One of the hardest things to recover from a surgery such as that is, since the break is so clean from the saw, your bones don't know to recalcify unless there's pressure being put on them. So if you were just to break your leg or your arm playing outside and the doctor puts on, a pretty hot pink cast, it just heals in 4 to 6 weeks. You don't really have to do anything or exercise. This type of surgery and this type of break needed compression for the bones to recalcify, to grow together. And so compression, the only way to do that is to walk on your broken leg over and over and over again.
Ouch.
Yeah. So when you talked about, perseverance in the beginning, those are definitely some of the ways that I had to continue to just push through that pain, push through and break my goals every day. It wasn't walking up and down the hallway. It was making one step out of bed and, making 2 steps out of bed, walking to the door, getting to physical therapy in the wheelchair, standing up on parallel bars, walking the length of parallel bars. We're talking small goals. And that's one thing for everyone to really recognize is when you want to change something or you want to achieve something in your life, start with small goals. You want to run a marathon? Don't go trying to run 5 miles today. Go for a walk first. Walk a few blocks, walk 1 mile, then run 1 mile. Start slow, and that all adds up. And that's what it added up for me, which was good.
Sure, absolutely. Wow. So that was during your college days. How are you today? Do you have issues every once in a while with the EDS?
I do. After a full about 15 to 18 month recovery from that whole surgery, I was in the hospital for that 73 days, but home for another, I was home for another 8 months on bed rest, and I lived in a Ronald McDonald house in Philadelphia in a wheelchair and did outpatient physical therapy 5 days a week for multiple hours a day for another 5 months. So it was a very lengthy recovery. I still am not strong on that leg as I should be. We're almost at 19 years later. I was just doing some yoga and bar in my basement last night, and I noticed I was taking a new program, and I was able to do very different things standing on my left leg and putting my right leg up as I was standing on my right leg and putting my left leg up. Standing on my right leg with just all my weight on that leg, my body, I don't have the strength in my hip, in my glute, in my thigh as I should or could. However, the prognosis and what I do have is way beyond what they ever thought I'd have. The range of motion. I mean, I wasn't able to bend my knee for, over 8 months. And to get pretty much full range of motion back was incredible. And that was kind of due to the Ehlers-Danlos because I'm so flexible. So my laxity actually helped me in that sense, which was great.
Okay. Wow. So other than a little flexibility, a little addition to the flexibility, so no real no real issues with the prior surgeries, anything like that, or is
Yeah,
it
I mean,
just kind of?
I do live in daily pain. Ehlers-Danlos has, definitely chronic pain associated with it. So I've gotten used to living in a daily amount of pain. I'm not able to run. I do this really weird hop skip thing if I'm running from like a beach chair to the ocean to chase after my kids or something like that, or in the backyard. I can't do like a full run of a sprint. My leg's just not strong enough to have that full stride. Steps I can do, one or two floors. More than that, I start getting some discomfort and some pain, and same with walking. So my knee does still swell if I have excess activity, or if I choose to do something more physical than I normally would. I definitely get a large increase of pain and swelling, and it sets me back for a couple days. So I've always needed to choose in my life situations that are worth it. One of those I talked about when I went to the junior senior prom when I was a sophomore and I borrowed my friend's dress. That night was worth it for me. I left the cane in the car. I danced the whole night. It set me back for probably 3 weeks in my recovery, but that was worth it for me. And I've had other situations in college and after college where, I've danced at a wedding, or I've gone on vacation and done something, and I knew I was doing something too physical for me in the moment, and I'd pay for it. I'd quote unquote pay for it for 3 or 4 days, but that was okay because to me, that was living. And if I didn't allow myself to have those nights of fun or, quote unquote being normal, then what's the point?
Sure.
So it was my way of choosing. I know I'm going to be in a lot of pain for a few days and it's going to set me back, but I'm choosing to have an unbelievable time now. And that's the choice I've made. And I've never looked back on those choices.
That's fantastic. Just kind of, balancing, hey, I want these experiences. I'm not going to let this situation hold me back from prom or from
Exactly.
dancing at weddings or other things.
Exactly. You can't make that choice every Friday or Saturday night, but you can definitely do it a decent amount. So, and as you get older, you learn that you really want to pick and choose those events wisely.
Sure, absolutely. You might think, well, was dancing at that wedding really worth it? I don't know.
Exactly.
Oh, so we at Food Experience Unplugged, we talk a lot about attitude. And for us, it's kind of food attitude, things of that nature. But going through these experiences, what was your attitude at the time? You're experiencing it. You're not necessarily reflecting back as you are today.
Yeah, and what's so interesting is going through the experience with my leg. I was 20 years old. I turned 21 when I was on bed rest in my home, and I was a very different person than I am now at 38. I persevered during that time in a way that I didn't know I was persevering, if that makes sense. I chose to do certain things and I look back on it and they didn't make sense to me in the moment, but looking back on it, they make so much sense. An example of that would be I found things to control. And this is like my best quality and my worst quality. I like to have control, and I don't like to not have control. And a lot of us can probably relate to that, right? So when you're in a situation and you're 20 years old and you've already had 1 year of college and being away from home and you're independent and you're running your own life, it's fantastic. And then when all that changes and you're confined to a bed, and I'm talking bedpans and bed bats for over 8 months, and you have no independence and you are in so much pain and you don't know if you'll ever walk again, and you're with your mom and your dad or your friends or whoever that is, your world comes crashing down. My mom was so incredibly gracious. She slept in a chair next to me in the hospital for 73 days and never left my side. And then I was home in our apartment. She took care of me every waking moment for another 5 months, and then went to the Ronald McDonald House with me 2 hours away in Philadelphia to live there with me, obviously, and help me to get to physical therapy and just to be my rock during that time. And I couldn't have gone through it without her. We had this positivity chain going of like, we could do this, and if we had each other, we could do this together. And what I found myself doing was when I was home, waiting for my leg to heal, and I was having all these complications and it wasn't healing and everything was kind of going wrong. But I just kept doing physical therapy and just kept pushing forward. I found that positive quotes and saying them over and over really helped me. And at the time, I had found a show called The Hour of Power. It was kind of like a religious, spiritual show. And I really wasn't that religious, but this show had so many awesome and inspiring motivational quotes. And I had this little purple notebook and I would write them down. And I'd leave it next to my bed. And I had a hospital bed brought into the living room of that house. I had the hospital rails, and we had a little plastic bin that was, zip tied to the rail so I can actually reach things. And I had the remote and chapstick in that notebook, I remember, and in my Walkman. I'm showing my age now. I had like a little Walkman. And I would write these quotes. And before I went to bed, I would read them to myself, because the ones I wrote down were my favorite ones that were said. And that gave me strength, and that gave me hope. And, the one day I was watching TV, and this song came on, and it was a Mariah Carey song, and it was, Walking Through the Rain. And the chorus was something like, I will walk through the rain again. And it resonated with me so much that I visualized myself just walking again. And I would listen to just that track 3 times before I went to bed.
Wow.
And I would visualize myself walking again. And I'd visualize myself walking down the aisle someday and getting married. And at the time, I didn't plan any of this. I didn't, of how to be positive or what to do. I didn't read a book saying this is what you should do when you're having the surgery. Somehow I just knew to do those things to get me through it. And it wasn't until I had a second really serious situation just 2 years ago when I was pregnant that I was on bed rest in the hospital for 65 days prior to delivering.
Wow.
And when that situation occurred, I immediately knew what to do to get through it. And what was interesting about that is, when my husband and I first got pregnant with our son, 6 years ago, he's 5 now. And I was a high risk pregnancy because of the Ehlers-Danlos. And I was followed so closely, and the doctors were very concerned about, weight that I was to, extra weight to be carrying, and the weight of the baby, and how that would impact my legs. We were super nervous about extra laxicity, because when you're pregnant, you get more lax, very nervous about delivery, the list goes on and on and on. Thankfully, that pregnancy went fairly well. My son ended up being breech, and so I had a C-section, which at the time was kind of a blessing in disguise, because I wanted a natural delivery, and the doctors were really concerned that my hips could dislocate as the baby was exiting. And if I had an epidural, I wouldn't be able to feel that. And so if they were pushing on my legs, which are very flexible, and I could put my feet behind my head, so if they're pushing on my legs, and they would be going very far back, and if I couldn't feel them going too far, they would probably dislocate or sublux, and that could be extremely dangerous, obviously, while you're delivering. But on the flip side, a surgery isn't good for me either, because my recovery from surgery is a lot longer than a regular person without Ehlers-Danlos. So it was like there was no lesser of two evils. But I always said, God kind of made up that decision, and no one had to choose. And the C-section it was, and he was delivered healthy, and I was healthy and had a lengthy recovery, but was fine. And about 2 years later, we decided to, expand our family, and I was pregnant again and monitored very closely. And at 20 weeks through my anatomy scan, found out that our daughter was perfectly fine, thank goodness, but that I had placenta previa, which is just your placenta lies low and covering your cervix. And, you would need to deliver via C-section. But I was going to do that anyways, after having one. And I was like, okay. And they shared with me that I had an increased chance of bleeding. And I was on a blood thinner. I am on a blood thinner because I have another health condition, for clotting. So being on a blood thinner and having an increased chance of clotting is not a great scenario. So I had to be extra cautious. And, this was December, November and December of 2017. And, it was a very busy time, and I was working my full-time job in sales in the payments industry, and taking care of my family, and, doing all the Christmas stuff and parties. And it was, right after the holidays on January 5th, and I was running an errand on my lunch hour on a Friday afternoon, and I just felt a gush. And prior to that, without, being too much TMI, whenever you feel a little bit of something down there when you're pregnant, you're like, I either peed my pants, or, it's just women's stuff happening, you're not really sure. But when you're told you might bleed, I always check and be like, oh, am I bleeding? Or, what is this? And that's a gross topic, so sorry. But this was a gush, and I knew that this was like my water breaking or I was hemorrhaging. And I excused myself to the restroom in the store, and there was blood everywhere. And I immediately called 911, and, they told me how to get on the floor, and I called my husband and rushed to the hospital. And thankfully our daughter was fine and wasn't in distress, and I didn't have to deliver, because at 25 weeks that would not have gone over very well. But I never left, and I stayed in that hospital, and, my condition worsened, and it went to placenta accreta and then increta, which means your placenta literally digs itself in your uterus and will not
Mm.
detach after delivery.
Wow.
And it will try to, and what happens when it tries to, you will just continue to hemorrhage. And if you're not if the blood's not stopped, that's when you have maternal death at that point.
Mm.
So the best news for me is it was diagnosed. So they knew about it. When it happens, when doctors aren't aware of it and you deliver a baby vaginally and you're waiting for the placenta to come out and then it doesn't, and then there's just massive hemorrhage, that's when it's very scary for the mom.
Yeah.
But they knew about it. And I never left that hospital for 65 days. And they told me the latest that I could ever carry her would be 34 weeks. My original due date was April 15th. And they told me I couldn't carry her past March 6th, which was 34 weeks, because the danger to me at that point to carrying her longer would greatly increase. And they were really worried about me hemorrhaging and not being able to stop the blood in time. And then, myself dying and or our daughter dying.
Mm-hmm.
So staying in that hospital for 65 days after having a previous 73-day hospital stay and, an additional 8 months and an additional 5 months, my friends kind of joked with me. They were like, Carrie, you've got this. Like, you know how to do this. Like, you are totally fine. You're like the warrior of the hospital on bed rest. And I said to them, I'm like, this is so different, guys. Like, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I have a career, I have bills to pay, I have concern, my life's in danger, my daughter's life is in danger. This is so different than being 20 years old in college, not really having a care of the world, in pain from surgery, so not really with it. This is where I was totally with it and just told to stay inside an 8x8 room.
Wow.
Not able to really leave that room. I mean, it was so small. 8x8 is probably pretty small. It was probably more like 18x10, but still. What was interesting though, is I immediately knew why my leg surgery happened in my life.
Mm.
And it was because with my pregnancy situation, I had a very finite time to get through it. And the doctors and the nurses kind of shared with me that it was a very slim chance I'd get to March 6th. And I said to them, no, you don't understand. I'm getting to March 6th because do you see my handmade calendar that's on the wall? And do you see the bright red circle around March 6th? Yeah, that's the date I'm getting to. And do you see the lines that I'm crossing off each day and how close I'm getting and the numbers of how many days I've been here? Yeah, I'm getting to that red circle. And they'd look at me like, okay. And, they just knew from statistics that the chance of getting there and not having another bleed or maybe not getting distressed was very rare. But I knew what I needed to do. And it was all about mental strength. And it was very similar to my leg surgery. And so one of the first things I did was decorate that room. And I ordered a custom banner from Etsy and it said, keep on cooking baby sister, because my son would call her baby sister. And I one night went on Google and found all these motivational quotes and I screen grabbed them and put them into Word and emailed them to my husband. And I said, print these in color and bring them to me tomorrow. And there was like 50 pages and I made a whole wall of motivation. And
Wow.
the ones that I wanted to see every day right in front of me, and all the other ones went to the right wall. And that banner went right up front. A couple of friends of mine sent me a little onesie that said worth the wait, and I hung it up right above the banner. And I just kept adding to it. My son would, when he would visit, bring me all these crafts. So I had all his, homemade crafts hanging on the wall and family pictures and obviously cards from everybody. And looking back at that, I, again, didn't fully realize how intense that room was when I was in it. Like people would visit me and say, whoa, this room is like, whew. And I'd be like, really? No, I just think it looks nice. And I look back at pictures, that room was absolutely crazy. Like so crazy. It was so chaotic. Almost every single inch of the walls were covered. But that's what made me feel at home. And that's what made me feel in control. And that's what gave me strength. And I even ordered, remote control candles that were lit at night to give me like a little bit of ambiance. And I had an Amazon Alexa Dot to play some music. And I had flowers from France. And I made that room look way better than any dorm room that I've ever had. And it was because I needed that environment. I wasn't able to leave that room for the first 4 weeks. And after that, they allowed me to just take one small walk up the hall twice a day. And that's it. So that's all I had. And I knew that my mindset and the positivity that I needed to keep telling myself was what was going to make me get through it. And that worked. The tip I have for people besides, staying positive, because it's kind of cliche to be like, if you're going through something, just stay positive. And a lot of people say how do I stay positive? And, when you dwell on the bad, when you dwell on the pain you're in, or when you dwell on the negative situation, or you dwell on your worries, that's the exact opposite of what you should be doing. You should acknowledge it, but then try to flip it. So yes, you can't do X, Y, Z, but what can you do? You know, you want to lose 30 pounds. Okay, well, let's try losing 1 right now. You don't need to lose 5 this week. That's a huge goal. Let's lose 1. Let's not have dessert tonight. Let's make small changes. You know, you're upset with your job. Well, okay, can you get a new mentor? How do you talk to your manager about changing what you're upset about? Are your worries, are they accurate? Like, is a perception of something you're upset about, or is your performance upsetting? Like, what is the problem? And I think people just need to get down to the nitty gritty of what are they worried about, and is it something that they can control? Because a lot of times we worry about things we can't control, and there's no point of worrying about them. Acknowledge them, but then don't focus on them because they're just bringing us down. If you focus on positive, you'll be lifted up. If you're focusing on the negative, you're going to be brought right down. And no one wants to be around that person who's down all the time. You know, the one thing that really worked for me, and again, it kind of goes back to like my best quality and worst quality, is the staying in control. And what I needed to do for myself to feel normal in the situation when I was hospitalized during the pregnancy was to continue working. So like I said, I'm in sales or in the payment space, and a very, really complex job. And I've been there for 13 years. And I had always tied things up in a pretty bow before maternity leave. Like, I was always very prepared. I had this master spreadsheet to give to, my colleagues to pick things up while I was out. And when this all happened to me at 25 weeks, that spreadsheet wasn't even started yet. And there was no way I was ready to stop working on so many things that I had worked so hard on for so long already. And, people had said to me, oh, you're going to have so much downtime in the hospital. Like, you should be Netflix like crazy, read some novels. People sent me, coloring books and Sudoku books and, all this stuff. I didn't touch it. I chose to keep working full time.
Wow.
And I remember talking to my boss about it. He was like, all right, maternity leave starts today. You're done. And I said, oh, no. Hold on. No. That's not what you say to Carrie. No, that's not what you say. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I am not ready. And if you want me to stay calm and not be stressed and get through this incredibly stressful, dangerous situation, you need to allow me to keep working. I said, I promise you that if work creates more stress for me and it's hurting me, I will stop. But what I can guarantee you is if I don't have it and I'm forced to sit here and do things that I normally don't have the time to do, my mind is going to realize that something's really wrong and I'm going to lose it. And I knew that. And, the doctors had shared with me being on bed rest when you're pregnant is one of the hardest things because your mind's there. You're not sick. You're not medicated, and it's a complete mental game. And actually, when I was admitted to the hospital, 2 days later, a woman who was pregnant had been there for a few weeks, had checked herself out against medical advice because she's like, I can't handle anymore. She's like, I have to get out of here. I need to get home. I have a child at home. Like I can't do it. And she checked herself out and the doctors had said that happened. So they said like, you need to do what you need to do to get through this time. And so I took that to a whole nother level. And I created like my own calendar of what I was doing each day. So I continued working and I structured my day with conference calls and visitors. I quickly found out that having more than 2 visitors a day was not good for me.
Okay.
And I found out that surprise visitors were not good for me. And because when you're on bed rest, you slow down. Your energy slows down, your stamina slows down. And I'm a very high energy person to begin with. And you slow down. And when I had more than 2 visitors a day and just talking with them for an hour or so was exhausting. I loved the interaction, but it was exhausting. And so back-to-back visitors weren't good and more than 2 weren't good. And so I made it known that you had to be on my schedule to come visit me. And I wanted 2 visitors a day. And there was no days in that 65 days that I didn't have 2 visitors. Actually, there was one, we had a huge blizzard. But there was one day that no one could get to me. But other than that, 2 people came every day. And a few times, a couple family members, extra of the 2 came. But I scheduled, visitor conference call, lunch when the baby got monitored. And then I even told the doctors when they were allowed to come in, which is kind of unheard of. And they would come in other times when I was on a conference call and I'd be like, oh, you can't, I'm running this call. Like you can't come in. And other times they'd come in if I was listening to a call and I'd mute it and, converse with them for a few minutes. So controlling my day gave me power. And that power is what I needed to prevail. Okay. I knew I needed to get control in some manner to conquer this mental challenge. And if I didn't have control of something, because let's face it, I didn't have control of what was happening inside of me. My placenta was turning into a monster who was literally trying to kill me and my baby. And I had zero control over that. And the thought of her being delivered early and, having lifelong issues of being a preemie or not making it, or like all of that, or me having lifelong issues if, they were thinking my placenta was going through my uterus and attacking my bladder. So bladder surgery was something that they were, they were thinking I was going to need. And the closer we got to 34 weeks, the more serious it really became. And they almost upped my surgery by a couple days. So I had to find control. And that's my other tip. Like, there's got to be a way that if you're struggling, for everyone listening, to find control of something that you can manage, that you can put a positive spin on, that you can focus on. Because if you feel powerless, you're going to spiral and you're going to think negative. But when you're in control, you feel powerful and you feel like you can conquer the world. And even if it's just the smallest thing, it makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. Wow. That is amazing. I love that. I love how now it seems like your experiences built on each other. Like you were able to conquer, to overcome, the pregnancy situation because of what has happened previously. Do you feel that way? What was that kind of transition?
100%. Looking back on my life now, and at 38, I'm sure I'm going to look back at it at 68 and be like, oh, wow, look at the other things that happened, since I started this business. And now those things all make sense. It's so fascinating to look back on our life and our learnings. I don't think that I would have been able to stay as positive as I did and persevere throughout that hospital stay with my pregnancy if I didn't have my leg surgery to tap into. I think it would have taken me a lot longer to figure out what those strategies are, to figure out the positive quotes is what I needed. And the pretty room full of positivity and color. I wouldn't have noticed that. I wouldn't have known that I was so visual and I needed that. I wouldn't have recognized that, needing to work and stay in control, it was something that I needed. I would have probably been like, yeah, peace out. I'm going to take maternity leave and start watching some movies. I needed to put together some Shutterfly photo albums. And I would have gotten those things done, which I kind of wish I did a little bit of that. But I couldn't, because that would have showed me that something was off. And that's the only reason I got through to March 6th. What's so fascinating about this story, though, and one of the main reasons why I wanted to share it with the world, because there's so many personal aspects of this that it's hard to share, is, when I left that hospital and my daughter did have to be in the NICU for just 18 days to get some help with breathing and to grow a little bit. And, we returned home as a family of 4 at the end of March. And, the hardest thing after being in the hospital for 65 days was, March 10th, which was me being discharged without my daughter.
Wow.
Because I was there for 65 days for her and to make sure that she survived. And the guilt that I felt for having her be delivered early to save my life was something that I worked really hard with in therapy, because, she was thriving. And I had said to the doctors, when they wanted to deliver her early, they wanted her to deliver her in late February, when they thought my condition was worsening. And I said, no, she's my March baby. She was supposed to be my April baby. You made her my March baby. She's not my February baby. My son is born in February. He's my February baby. And they looked at me like I was crazy. And I was like, you are not delivering her in February. And the doctors were like, Carrie, you can't control that. And I said, wait, if my water breaks or she's in distress and you have to deliver her in February, I'm fine with that. But we are not having a scheduled surgery in February. And they were like, at first they said that, well, no, absolutely not. And then there was a whole other issue why we had to bump it back to March 6th. So, it was me trying to control again. It was me trying to control, but to go through the whole situation and then to leave on March 10th, 4 days after I delivered without my daughter Tenley was so strange. I was actually very sad it was very emotional to leave the hospital. My one doctor had said, he's like, it's a proven fact that you bond with your captors. Like I lived there. Like I became so close to the nurses, which I'm still friends with, and I get together with them sometimes. And, the doctors, and I got into a routine, and not that I didn't want to go home, obviously, but it's just such a shift. And to go home without my daughter and to have the guilt of like her needing to stay there, to have her delivered early, to save me and save her, it was just so hard. But it wasn't until 4 months postpartum that I started to have really emotional challenges. And the doctors had said, for me, as soon as I left the hospital, that I should probably, go to some one-on-one counseling. I had endured an unbelievable amount of trauma and, thinking of death for 65 days. And even though I was positive and I pushed that down, it's going to come up at some point. Mm-hmm. And I'm very grateful that I listened to them. I was, having definitely some attachment issues with my daughter. It was weird to not have her next to me in the room after delivery. I mean, I was under general anesthesia when I got delivered. In order to save my life, I had to have a hysterectomy. I did have a blood transfusion. And she was obviously taken right to the NICU. So I missed the birth. My husband missed the birth. And that was all scheduled on March 6th. I got to March 6th, which was fantastic. I don't think I told you that earlier. I got to March 6th. I let that up for so long. I got there. We got all the way there, and knowing that I was going to be able to miss the birth was very difficult. But then, once I returned from the OR and was brought back to my room, to not be with my baby there in the bassinet, which is what I was able to do when my son was delivered, and to not, be breastfeeding, but be pumping. And, it was just so different. It was so hard mentally. And then to be in so much pain from the hysterectomy and, only able to go to the NICU for a few minutes the next day and then a few more minutes the following day. It was very mentally and emotionally challenging, to say the least. But then once I returned home, I thought it was all great. Like, I thought all the challenges were behind us and, we're ready to move on with our, wonderful life as a family of 4. And, at 4 months postpartum, the anger really set in and the sadness really set in. And I was having a hard time connecting to Tenley. And I found myself just constantly like running errands with her and just kind of running. I was running around doing errands, but I think I was just running from a feeling that I wasn't connecting and I wasn't feeling myself. And then I just started having a lot of triggers when I'd see pregnancy announcements on Facebook or Instagram from friends, or ads for maternity clothes, or anything relating to, newborn babies or pregnancy, because, with the hysterectomy, I can never have more children. And I don't know if we were ever going to have more, but I now don't have that choice to make up. And, that was really, really hard. That was very, very hard. But I'm extremely grateful that the care that I had from my OBs and the hospital, and the attention they gave me, and the way the surgery was performed, it majorly surpassed what I ever expected and what they even expected. I mean, the surgery went extremely well, way better than they thought. They did it right before my placenta went through my uterus, so it didn't hit my bladder yet. But if we waited another week, it probably would have. So I'm so grateful for the fact that I don't have any lifelong medical conditions. I definitely have a long vertical scar in my stomach, and I'll have some challenges with a couple other things. But in general, I'm very healthy, and so is my daughter, and I feel very blessed. But with the anger and sadness that came out, and everything I was working through with the trauma, I did get diagnosed with a post-traumatic stress disorder. And I really had to work through that. And when I was told I had that by my therapist, I was really taken back. And, I thought to myself, that's what war veterans have. Like, how do I have PTSD? And, when it was really explained to me of, the length of time that I dealt with a life and death situation, and the scare that I had, and, the uncertainty for such a length of time, and that I really pushed down, and how I stayed so positive. I mean, incredibly positive throughout that time. I had my days where I was crying, and I had my days that I was upset. So don't get me wrong, but all that had to come up, and I had to be able to work through that. At some point, you have to work through it. And so thankfully I had a really wonderful therapist, and did some incredible therapy called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which helped to reprocess the trauma in my brain. And I was able to relive certain traumatic situations that occurred, and really file them back in my brain appropriately to be able to move on. And so, it was a good 1.5-year process after, after she was delivered. And, once I fully felt like I healed from that, and I went from, what I thought of like conquering the situation and conquering my second challenge and feeling so strong, and then feeling like I fell flat on my face with that diagnosis, but then healing from that, I realized that I didn't fail. I thought the diagnosis of PTSD meant that I failed. But I didn't. And once I realized that, and that was the way I needed to process what happened to then come out of it again, that it was just a part of my story, that I wanted to share that with others, to let them know that it's okay if you have down moments. It's okay if you have depression or sadness and you're upset. You don't have to be, smiling and laughing every single day. But what you do have to do is get out of the down. So you can't stay there for a long time. So if you're depressed or sad, you have to get help. And there's a variety of ways you can do that to get back up, to rise yourself back up again. And you will. So the danger is staying there for a long time. It's not being there. I fully believe you have to be there in some moments when you've gone through things. You can't just push trauma, sadness and grief aside. You need to go there, but you can't stay there.
Sure. Now so that's basically, is that challenge number 4? I'm trying to keep track here.
I know. I guess it is. Yeah. There's been a lot.
So things started with high school, basically, or early college with your,
Yeah, it did. It started really with high school. But I mean, the pain and stuff started, as early as, being 5, 6, 7 years old. Even when I was 8, I was a dancer from the time I was 3 years old, and I was supposed to go on toe shoes when I was 8 years old. And I got the toe shoes and went to the 2-week camp. And every time I went on my toes, my ankles would collapse. Ooh, and my teacher was like, why are your ankles stronger? Like, you need to work them out. And I don't know. And I wasn't able to ever go on toe shoes because my joints are so flexible and my joints are so lax that they would just collapse. And so looking back on it, and seeing with weird things in my teeth, I had braces for 7 years and my teeth weren't even that bad, but they would move and they'd move back and they'd move and they'd move back. And the doctor, no one could figure out why, but now I know why. There's been so many situations in my life where I've looked at and realized that I've had to adapt. And, you and I were talking a little bit before this, and, with your incredible podcast, which I've been a fan of and watching, and, talking about your relationships with food and body image, and how you overcome those different challenges in your life and how food shapes you. Looking back on my life, as a young girl, I think every, kids, they're skinny, they're chubby, they're skinny, they're chubby. And, around my puberty years, I had a little bit of chub, right? I had my maiden name is Javinsky, and I had we call them the Javinsky cheeks. And, I had a little bit of chub on me. And when a couple of our elementary schools merged into a middle school, I got teased really, really bad. And I remembered getting that bullied feeling, and wanting to be a part of a different group of girls who the group of girls from my elementary school, we were all great friends. And this other group of girls came in and they didn't like me for whatever reason. And they chose to pick on me, and it really affected me. And I, started not eating. And, this is something I've never shared with anyone before, but for, a good 2 years, maybe even more than that, I gave my lunch away at school every day.
Wow.
Every single day. I gave my entire lunch away, and I would sit there and I wouldn't eat lunch. And it was a way of kind of, starving myself. And I became skinny. It took a while, but I became skinny, and, no one ever knew that I was on the path of anorexia. I never got diagnosed of that, and I never was taken to a doctor. It was probably just, I grew a little bit more, and, just thinned out was probably the thought. But yeah, I definitely was not healthy, and I wasn't eating the way I should. And, even growing up in dance for so long, I always remember in dance school, even being a little girl, and I was just a tad chubby. I wasn't even a chubby kid, but I remember them always being suck in your stomach and, arm out and suck in your stomach. I'm so used to sucking in my stomach now. I mean, I'm a size 4, I'm a tiny girl. I still walk around, 12 hours a day with my stomach sucked in, because I'm still remembering that from being little and being told that so often. But the irony to the story is, what I've needed to do is, have a different relationship with exercise and food. I now have the most incredible appetite I have for many, many years. I eat like a grown man. I think my metabolism has just sped up a little bit. So I guess I'm blessed there, but I've always had to find exercises that would work for me to stay in shape, because I can't go run a marathon, and I can't lift heavy weights, and I can't do a lot of cardio because of my joints and the Ehlers-Danlos. So it wasn't until a few years ago that I found, bar exercises and Pilates and some yoga, that it really helped to streamline my whole body. And it helped me to be long and lean, and it helped my joints so much that I was able to even come off pain medicine. Wow. Which is incredible. And it strengthened my joints in a way that it stopped some subluxing from happening. And I've noticed that if I take some time off of that exercise, that I do atrophy very fast. My muscles do get weak very fast, and I have more elasticity in my joints. But if I stay at a certain weight, where I have been now for many years, it's my sweet spot. You know what I mean? If I lose any more weight, my joints become too lax. I need a little bit on me. And if I gain too much, my joints hurt because I'm too heavy. So I have to stay in this, this range of, within like a 7-10 pound range. Where is my sweet spot? And, that's worked for me now for probably, I'd say 5 years, give and take, after obviously pregnancy and then losing the weight again. But right now I'm probably from a body image and, health for the Ehlers-Danlos, like the best I've ever been. I've really figured out how to exercise. I feel healthy. My relationship with food is totally fine. I eat whatever I want, probably way too much of it. And it's just, and I never, the eating or the not eating of food was always just because I wanted my body to look a certain way. And now that I have that in general, we all have certain areas of our body we're not happy with, but, in general, the fact that was able to adapt from that and then not have that affect me long-term, I feel like that's another area where I persevered without knowing that I was trying to take control of something and persevere, I guess. So it's kind of fascinating to put that together.
I love that. That's fantastic. Just how that relationship with food changed based on your experiences and how that really propelled you forward to, perhaps make you stronger to take on these next set of challenges that were coming down the road.
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And I hope I'm all done with challenges the rest of my life. I have a feeling that's not going to be the case. I mean, I've already had at least 150 days in the hospital. Hopefully I don't have any more. That's more days than anyone usually spends in their entire life. But I have a feeling I'll be ready for whatever next challenge I'm given.
Sure, absolutely. And you've really stayed positive, the whole way through, or a good amount of that. Why do you feel that, or do you feel, why is it often a struggle, I guess, for people to see challenges as a learning experience? Because you could have easily been bitter, resentful through any or all of those different experiences.
Yeah, it's so true. It's easiest to be negative, and it's easier to complain, and it's easier to hang out with people who commiserate with you. It's harder to be positive, to pump people up, to say, I've got this, to come up with strategies to figure out, to turn a negative into a positive. So I think most people, when challenges do happen, they tend to use it a little bit as an excuse to say, oh, well, I can't do that anymore. So I guess, I can't play that sport anymore. I can't exercise anymore. So I guess I can't control my weight anymore. So, I mean, when I gain weight, I'm just going to use that as my excuse. Or I've gotten pregnant and I gained so much weight when I was pregnant. I'm never going to get back to the size I was before. I mean, I had a baby. Why should I? It's so easy to use those excuses. Or, this situation happened with a family member, or this person passed away. Like, it's just so easy to create excuses. And I think people sometimes want the easy way out. A lot of times we all look for the easy way out. And sometimes that's warranted and sometimes it's not. And I think we need to challenge ourselves to say, are we using this as an excuse? Or is this a true reason? Because if it's a reason, like, for instance, let me go back to weight issues with eating. Like, if you gained weight when you were pregnant, you can lose that weight again. It's not easy, but you can do it. Many of us, many people have done it, and many people have not done it. And I know, friends who have not done it, and they've said, well, gosh, I mean, I gained so much weight. I had diabetes, or I had this, or, I just can't. Okay. Have you tried? And if you've tried and you can't, and you've gotten help and you've truly, truly tried, there might be a reason why you can't. Because if you're counting calories and you're exercising, like, statistically, you should be burning, you're losing weight. So what have you done to really help that situation, right? And sometimes there could be an imbalance in your body, and there could be a medical reason why you can't. And I totally get that. I'm not saying that everyone who has a baby should go back to their regular size. Not saying that at all. But if you want to go back to your regular size, there's a way to do that. You know what I mean? And if you don't, that's fine too. Like, as long as you're happy with how you are. And there's many moms that are wonderfully happy on how they are, and they don't want to go back to their other weight, and they're more happy in their body. And I say, more power to you. That is so fantastic. But what I want people to do is to be happy. Don't make excuses for yourself and then complain about them.
Sure. And
that's kind of what it has to, that's really what the message is like, you can make the change. It's fully up to you. So find the situation to control and do it. Get help, ask for it, ask for feedback, but just make the change. Take the risk, make the change. And that's hard to do. It's easy to be complacent and just to stay in your own ways and just kind of give up, but that's not the life to live. So if you want to make the change, no matter what it is, do a small step today, another small step tomorrow, and all those small steps will eventually add up and you'll get there.
Outstanding. I love it. Carrie, you are amazing just
Uh,
through that resilience, that really seeing things and learning from them and then using them. And now as a speaker, being able to relay that information, to share your story. So amazing. I love it. And oh my goodness. So how can people get in contact with you for more information?
Sure, absolutely. So my website is www.carriecreed.com. And I also have a community on social media. So you can find me at Carrie Creed Speaker on both Instagram and Facebook. And so I post a lot of my own story of perseverance, and I have some old pictures that I share and my strategies of what I've done to, overcome those situations. I also talk a lot about real life situations with my kids and my family now, and things that they do and how I relate that back, and positive mindset. So I'd love to have you as a part of that community. Again, it's Carrie Creed Speaker. And if you're looking for a speaker at your next event, if it's a corporate event or a women's event or any type of, organization that's looking for a motivational, inspiring speaker, I would love to speak with you about that.
Excellent. Well, we will include all of that information in the show notes. And Carrie, it's been a pleasure. It's been amazing. I love your story. I love your focus and your positivity, whether it be eating issues or different challenges with health or with anything in life. So really having that positive attitude, really having that focus, I love it. Carrie, you're the one. So
Uh,
well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Michelle. That means a lot coming from you. And I greatly appreciate you inviting me on your show. And I love what you're doing. And I'll be a fan for life. So thank you so much.